Hello everyone, this is a question and I'm back with my reading log for the month of October. So besides just buying manga, I also do read it, and this was everything I read in the month of October. I obviously focused on scary, horror, spooky, mystery themed series for this month, and I read through a ton of great stuff this month, some more mediocre stuff, but a lot of really great series that I really enjoyed. So let's get right into what I read. Okay, so the first thing that I read through this month was I read through all of Franken Fran in these 4 omnibus volumes from 7 Seas. This series was out of print for a long time, was going for a decent amount of money, and then within the last year, I think, got reprinted by 7 Seas, so this should be readily available for you. And then another thing to notice, as you can obviously tell by these covers make it look like it is a very ecchi series. It is not that, so I don't really know why they went with these covers. These are the same covers that they used for the Japanese volumes, but you know, the people who were expecting an ecchi series that bought this, we're gonna be really disappointed because there's nothing like this in the actual book. And then I'm sure there was a lot of people turned off by the covers and never actually, you know, read it because of the covers, and you know, they didn't get to enjoy a series that they might otherwise have enjoyed. So. Just a little bit about the story. This story, she's basically a Frankenstein's monster. She was created, and she is, you know, made up of parts, and she is reanimated, and she acts as a doctor, doing a bunch of just crazy cases that she gets along the way. So there's a lot of dark humor. It is very episodic, every chapter is basically its own case. There is some connecting cases that happen as the story goes. But overall, I really enjoyed this first omnibus. I feel like it gave me, you know, it kind of told a good story. You know, you kind of get what it's going for. But as the omnibuses kind of went along, as the story went along, it started getting a little repetitive. I was getting more bored because it's basically, you know, every 40 pages is another case, and it's kind of variations of the same thing where, you know, someone needs something done and Fran ends up doing something super crazy and doesn't actually, you know, it ends up not helping them or makes it worse. So, you know, the artwork is fine. There is a little too many of these really tiny panels, which I don't care for as much. But as you can see, yeah, you know, it's got some kind of dark, you know, but it's kind of in a cutesy way. Like there's nothing too scary or horror related in these volumes. So, you know, it was okay. It's probably, I'm thinking I'm probably going to be unhauling this just because I don't see myself ever rereading it. But it was definitely worth a read, and, you know, definitely give it a chance if you're into dark comedy, kind of more cutesy horror type stuff. Check this one out. Okay, so next up, I read through the latest Junji Ito hardcover, and that is Soichi. I was hoping to have 2 Junji Ito books to read this month. Mimi's Tales of Terror also came out this month, and I saw it at Barnes & Noble a month ago, and as of recording this, and I still have not received my pre-order copy from Crunchyroll, even though I did finally receive some Crunchyroll pre-orders, so that's disappointing. I didn't get to read that. I was really excited to read that for October, but I did get Soichi in, and for anybody who doesn't know, Soichi is probably the most famous Junji Ito character that isn't super popular in America, but super popular in Japan. And Soichi is kind of just this evil-ass little kid who lives with a normal family. So his brother and sister and his parents are normal, but he is just an evil terror of a little child. And most of the short stories revolve around his cousins coming to visit and him trying to ruin their lives. So, you know, if you've read Junji Ito, you know what you're getting here. I really enjoy Junji Ito's stories. I really enjoy his artwork. This is a really great collection, so if you're into Junji Ito, definitely check this one out. Okay, so next up, I read through all 3 of the PTSD Omnibus volumes, or PTSD Radio Omnibus volumes. The covers are very creepy. It's got some embossing kind of on the eyes and speakers. So there's volume 1, there's volume 2. And here is volume 3. The covers are fairly creepy. But as far as the series goes, I was pretty underwhelmed by this series. It had been heavily hyped. Heard how scary it was. It scared the creator so much you can't make it anymore. I didn't find anything scary in this. Most of this is pretty cheesy. It's a lot of 20-page fragments of a story that go nowhere, and the very last page is just a scary face up close. That's 90% of the stories in these 3 volumes. So not too sure what people are finding in this that's absolutely blowing them away. But yeah, at least for me, I was pretty underwhelmed. I didn't hate it or anything. I gave the first volume, I think I get 4 stars on Goodreads, but like a 3.5 is really what I would have rated it if they would do half stars. But as it went, I was down to like 2.5 stars probably by the last volume. So pretty underwhelming. I was hoping this was going to be just some really fantastic, scary horror. Even if it wasn't scary, if it was just good, better stories. But very fragmented. They don't, the majority of stories, like I said, don't really go anywhere other than a scary face at the end, and then you're supposed to be like, ooh, and then that's the end of the story. So pretty underwhelming. I don't know if this is another one. I don't know if I'm going to keep this. I don't ever see myself rereading this, so I might just get rid of this. But they are really nice looking volumes. The covers are really great. But yeah, just a pretty big disappointment. One of the things I was most excited to read through this month. Okay, so next up I read through Summer Ghosts, the complete manga collection. This was originally an anime and then was turned into a manga, so kind of reverse of normal. And I hadn't heard too many people talk about this. This one I just kind of blindly pre-ordered. I hadn't heard anything about the movie. But yeah, this was really good. I really enjoyed this one. Not really a horror book. It's more a mystery. It's about 3 kids who find out about this urban legend about this spirit known as the Summer Ghost, and so they all have their own things going on in their lives, and they end up wanting to try to summon this ghost. So as they summon that, as they're attempting to do that, and they're basically 3 strangers who all have kind of some sort of trauma going on in their lives, they become friends and end up helping each other out, all while they're trying to figure out what's going on with this ghost and trying to find out about this urban legend. So very interesting series. I really enjoyed it. If you like kind of high school, college mystery series, definitely check this one out. It's an all-in-one. But yeah, this one was really good. Next up, I read through Tokyo Zombie. This is released by Last Gasp, who doesn't do a lot of manga. They're more an indie American comic publisher, and I can definitely tell why they released this, because this feels like an indie American comic, just in the way it's drawn and also in the storytelling. It basically follows these 2 blue-collar factory workers who, during a zombie apocalypse, end up having to try to survive and become zombie gladiators, and all kinds of craziness happens. It is a horror comedy. There's lots of kind of notes about it that, comparing it to Shaun of the Dead. It's another one. It was just okay. I wasn't too impressed by it. It was fun for a bit, but it just kind of, it's more of a concept than an actual interesting story to read. It does have some funny parts, and the art's fine. But yeah, this is another one that good to have, but I don't see myself ever reading this one again. Next up, I read through the 2 omnibus volumes of Devil Ecstasy by Shuzo Ishimi, one of my favorite manga creators. This is one that I had not read. I've had this for a little bit, but I was kind of waiting to Halloween to read this. And this is one of his earlier works and is not usually very highly regarded. But like most Ishimi stuff, I really enjoyed this one. It's definitely rougher. You can tell this is one of his early works. But it's just enough Shuzo Ishimi crazy that makes you really enjoy it. If you've read any of Oshimi's works and read any of his afterwords or his little interviews, he's a weird guy, and the weirdness is very much in this. I can't even really describe the story too much because it's very adult and hard to describe, but it's basically about this massage parlor that is filled with these women that are succubuses, and you know, they're trying to take over the world, and this guy, our main character, ends up falling in love with one of the girls there, and so he tries to rescue her, and chaos and all kinds of craziness ensues. So I really enjoyed this. If you're a fan of Shuzo Oshimi, definitely give this one a shot. But if you're not into Shuzo Oshimi, this is definitely not the first one that I tell you to pick up. This would be lower on the totem pole if you're not a Shuzo Oshimi fan already. This is definitely one kind of more for the already Oshimi fan. But yeah, this was really enjoyable. It was exactly what I expected from a early Shuzo Oshimi book. But definitely one I'm glad to have in my collection. Next up, we have Betwixt, a horror manga anthology. I described this in my manga haul, but the back half of this book is stories by 3 manga creators where they're read right to left, and then you flip it over this way, and on this side we have 3 stories from American comic creators, so they're read left to right, and this is all wrapped in a Junji Ito cover, but he does not do any of the stories inside. And so this is, like it says here, it's an anthology collection. And this one, it was another one of those ones, it's just okay. I found it to be, I wasn't too impressed by it. Really, the only story that I really enjoyed was by the one by Shima Shinya, who did Lost Lad London and Glitch. But most of the other stories were just forgettable. The artwork in this first American story is really good, by Becky Cloonan. But overall, just kind of a, you know, after you've read each short story, they're all pretty forgettable, other than the one like I mentioned. So I'll keep this in my collection. I like short story collections, I like anthologies, but this one was just kind of a middle of the road one. Next up, we have a short 2-volume series, and that is Hungry for You, Endo Yasuko Stalks the Night. This is a 7 Seas release. I haven't heard anything about this one. I hadn't heard anybody talk about this one. I found these 2 volumes at a used bookstore a while ago, and I went ahead and decided to grab it. And this series is very similar to Vampires, a newer series that came out from Denpa. It's about a high school girl who, she goes to a new school, and a bunch of girls have gone missing, and so everyone suspects that one of the students is a vampire, and so she becomes friends with her, and she ends up, you know, kind of becoming her prey, mixed with a Yuri. So just like Vampires, it's kind of a Yuri girls vampire series, but this one's only a short 2 volumes. It is fine. With it only being 2 volumes, it's one of those ones that kind of feels like it got canceled, not that it was meant to only be 2 volumes. So it's wrapped up really quickly in its 2nd volume. So I don't know if I'd recommend it for people looking for kind of a vampire Yuri, but yeah, it's solid. The writing's good. The characters are pretty interesting. It's just because it was cut short, it's not, you know, you don't get that much out of it before it is over. So that was that short 2-volume series. Next up, we have one of the best things that I read through this month, and that is the 2 hardcover volumes of The Ghost and the Lady. It says on the cover, Kazuhiro Fujita presents The Black Museum, The Ghost and the Lady, Book 1 and Book 2. Last time I had checked, this Book 2 was pretty hard to find. Book 1 was easily available, and then Book 2 had been out of stock / out of print for a while. I was luckily able to get a copy for fairly cheap a while ago, even though I'd gotten volume 1 a long time before that. But these are really nice releases, and I highly recommend this series if you're able to find it. It is a sort of historical series about Florence Nightingale and this man in gray who kind of follows her around, acts as her protector. And the whole time he tells her that he's going to take her life at some point, but he ends up, you know, kind of becoming obsessed with her and following her around. The artwork is pretty interesting. Her character design is pretty cool. His character design, as you can see here on the cover, is pretty interesting. Just a very weird series about Florence Nightingale and ghosts and all kinds of craziness, but also revolving around actual real life Florence Nightingale stories, you know, kind of showing what she really did over her life. Obviously, there wasn't a man in gray specter kind of following her around, protecting her the whole time. But yeah, this was a great story. I like this so much that I immediately looked online to see if there was anything else by this creator that's been released in English, and I don't think there was. I couldn't find anything. But yeah, after reading this, I definitely want to read more of this creator's work, because this was really good, really highly recommended. It has some funny parts. It's got some romance parts, some good action, just a really good series. Next up, I read through 2 volumes of this manhwa series. It is called The Hellbound. It says on the cover here, this is now a Netflix original series. This is released by Dark. So the 2 volumes are everything. It is a completed series. I don't know if they're going to make more of this, but this is a completed story, even though volume 2 wraps up pretty poorly, which is kind of a disappointment. The overall premise of the story was pretty interesting. It revolves around, you basically get this notification that it only has your name and the fact that you are going to die, and it tells you exactly when you're going to die, and that these demons are basically going to come rip you apart and take you to hell. So, you know, some people are told and they have a week, some people are told and they have 40 years, you know, and it's basically about this cult and this religion that comes about, who, you know, thinks this is all happening because society has become, you know, not morally correct. So it's basically them thinking that the whole reason this is happening is because people aren't being good, and so they see this as a positive. So the overall premise is very interesting. I just don't think it wrapped up very well by the end of the 2nd volume. It feels like it should have gone along longer or had a better wrap up, kind of telling us a little bit more about what this is all about. It just kind of ends. So maybe they'll end up making more of this, but as it is, it was fine. I don't really recommend it too much. The artwork's fine. I don't know if the Netflix series improves upon the story, but it was okay. It was worth a read, but another one where I don't know if I'm going to keep this in my collection. Okay, so next up, another really great thing that I read through this month was I read through all 4 of the Orochi hardcovers by Kazuo Umez. This first hardcover especially had 2 of my favorite short stories, 2 of my favorite stories in all of these volumes in it. If you've read any other of his work, if you read The Drifting Classroom, I highly recommend reading through Orochi. This first hardcover especially was probably my favorite Umez that I've read. Just really great storytelling, really great artwork, great mystery. Our main character here, Orochi, it's pretty funny. There's a few times in these stories where she kind of is like this character that just kind of appears and sees something interesting and decides to go mess around in their lives and follow them around. And a few times in these stories, what she does actually like makes it worse. But she's actually, you know, she's trying to help. She's kind of a heroic character, but she ends up doing the wrong thing sometimes, or ends up making it worse. Really great artwork. You know, there is some character sameness in the faces. I think Umez is kind of known for that. Some of his child characters kind of have more adult looking faces. But yeah, this was fantastic all the way through. I enjoyed all of them. Each one of these has like 2 or 3 short stories in it. I think 4 is probably the most famous short story. The Orochi Blood short story is probably the most famous one. But and it was good, but the first 2 were actually my favorite out of all of these. So if you're into Junji Ito, definitely check out Umez, who is, you know, one of the people that Junji Ito kind of followed after. But yeah, just great artwork, great storytelling. I enjoyed this Orochi more than I enjoyed Drifting Classroom, and most people think Drifting Classroom is kind of his high point. But I really enjoyed Orochi. This was a really great series. Glad I read it, and really glad that Viz is releasing a lot more of his work in English. I do have The First Cat-Eyed Boy. I was going to read that in October, but I'd rather read them together once the 2nd volume comes out. And then I know we have another series that's coming out from Viz after that. So definitely check out Orochi. Okay, so next up, we have another, this was one of the books that I mentioned in my haul. This is that 4-in-1 Monster Omnibus release. The series is called Another. And as you can see here, this is a giant 4-in-1 Yen Press book. I mentioned in the in my manga haul that this is incredibly hard to read. I kind of realized that 3-in-1s is a good fit. 4-in-1s, it was incredibly hard to read this without cracking the spine. And I bought this used, so I'm pretty surprised that both me and the previous person didn't crack the spine. But as far as the story goes, we have a high school mystery where this kid comes to a new school, and this school is cursed. So he finds out about this weird curse that is happening at this school. I can't really describe the story without, without spoiling stuff. It is a high school mystery. The mystery kept me engaged, even though the curse is so over the top and silly, and has so many rules to it. It's like, what kind of demon or witch made this overly convoluted curse where people have to go indoors a certain way, or they have to go down certain stairs, but not one stair. They have to go down the east stair, not the west stair. Very weird levels of rules for this curse. So every time they would like introduce another level of rules for this curse, I would laugh. But the mystery kept me engaged enough that I wanted to see where this was going to go. And it did wrap up. It did wrap up well. I did end up enjoying it. But it's just a high school mystery series with, which is going to keep you engaged enough, but after you've read it, after you finished it, you're not going to remember too much about it after that. So it was good, and if you can find it for a cheap price, definitely check it out. Okay, so next up we have a Volume 1, and that is Sora and the House of Monsters Volume 1. This is a brand new series from 7 Seas. And this one was really fun. I really enjoyed this one. It basically follows this orphan girl who has been raised her whole life to train to be a monster killer because there's this war going on between monsters and humans. And right when she is old enough to actually begin fighting the monsters, the war ends. So almost on the day that she's supposed to be sent out to war and she's spent her whole life training to kill monsters, there is no longer a war and there is peace. So now she doesn't know what she's going to do with her life. She ends up running into these monsters, and she's obviously thinking suspiciously about them because that's how she's been trained. But she finds out that they're good, and they build houses and dwellings for other monster species. And so this series looks like it's going to be a kind of slice of life where she works with these monsters, and they kind of have their own little guild where they go around building houses for monsters. Different, we got Griffin, they build house for slime, for goblins. Just a fun series. The artwork's cute. It was just a very cute read, nothing scary about it. But I really enjoyed this one. Definitely going to continue on with it. Next up, we have another Volume 1, and this was another just fantastic Volume 1, and that is #Drcl Midnight Children. This is, I think, the first English release we've gotten by Shinichi Sakamoto, and this one blew me away. This one was just fantastic. The artwork, which the creator's known for, was as beautiful as, everyone said it was going to be. Very beautiful artwork. But I found the story very interesting too, very creepy. You can see here by this picture, just a very well done story. It is obviously a Dracula story based on Bram Stoker's Dracula, but it takes place in a boarding school. And I'm not going to say too much more than that, but I love this. It's a really nice hardcover. It is a little smaller than kind of your standard hardcover. Like here's the Sora and the House of Monsters is basically the same size as it. So a little smaller than like the Junji Ito hardcovers, but a really nice release, great artwork. Looking forward to more of this. And then I think we're getting another release by this creator shortly also. Okay, and the last thing that I read through in the month of October was A Hero in the Demon's Castle. This is another one. I hadn't heard too much about it. I knew it was a BL. It is by Kuma. And I just thought the cover looked awesome. The artwork on the cover looks really nice. I like the colors. Here's the back. It's basically about this demon lord who spends his time in this castle and that's constantly attacked by heroes. And this hero appears and ends up falling in love with him and wants to stay in the castle with him. So the demon kind of just puts up with him. This one I was incredibly bored by. I don't even think I was able to finish this one. I think I made it about halfway through and I was so bored by the story that I just stopped reading it, which is pretty rare. I usually can force myself to finish. But it goes so fast, like within like the first chapter, they've already been together for like 3 months and there's no, it doesn't, you know, everything is kind of told in flashback. So instead of seeing the two characters do anything, it's kind of the Demon King is like telling someone else about what happened. So I just, you know, other than the artwork on the cover, the artwork inside is fine, but it doesn't really match up as well as it does here on this cover. So yeah, this is one I'll be unhauling. You know, I wasn't even good enough that I could finish it. But yeah, if you enjoyed this one, please let me know what I missed. But yeah, I wasn't very impressed by this. Okay, so that was everything that I read in the month of October. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. If you disagree, agree with anything I said, please let me know in the comments. I did finally hit 800 subscribers this month, which was awesome. Really happy about that. Thank you all who have subscribed for the support, and I will see you in the next video.